I'd like to welcome each and every individual to Voices of Integrity podcast. And we're talking about Voices of Integrity to men today. We've been through the amiable personality and how to be an amazing man as an amiable. The next one, the one we're doing today now, is as the analytics. So if you chose the cube or things being out of order, you'd be an analytic. And so one of your greatest strengths would be you like to dot your I's, cross your T's, make sure things are done properly in order. One of your weaknesses would be you like to dot your I's, cross your T's, make sure things are done properly in order. So our greatest strength is our greatest weakness, and our greatest weakness would be our greatest strength misapplied as taking a strength and carrying it too far. The weakness of the analytic personality as a man is that we often niggle things. Niggle is actually a word. It's picky. We're picky about little things. Like, if you ask your significant other, how much did it cost? And they say, $100. And you say, no, it wasn't $100. It was $100.23. Like, is that 23 cents really that important? Like, often the analytic is really picky on the details and they miss the big picture. They tend to have high ego. So, there's a rule: you never argue with an analytic, because even if they're wrong, they have enough data to make it look like they're right in their own mind. You can have where everybody around the analytic says the analytic is wrong, like they're wrong, but the analytic in their own mind, it's like they're not. So, Tim, as it relates to being a man, the analytic, questions or thoughts that you have as it relates to, men and being a man and the challenges of being a man and the different personalities, especially the analytic.
So I definitely think with the analytic, you were saying how they they mention small details and they oftentimes even in an argument, if they're wrong, they can present the right information. As a man, sometimes you got to learn what small information is important because sometimes the small information is important is I've seen people give small amounts of details to the truth to make their side look better. But sometimes those small details and trying to look ourselves better, if we don't present that, we do it for a reason. We're not presenting something because we're trying to make ourselves look a certain way. And sometimes being a man is having the truth at face value.
See, it's interesting. I was, what was I, 21 years old, I think. A few years back, I was in college at Northern Illinois University, and I heard about the space shuttle exploding. And so a number of astronauts died, a school teacher died, and it came out later that it was a little O-ring. like there's this O-ring, so there's millions, literally millions of parts in the space shuttle, and what caused it to explode was an O-ring. Like, it's just this little tiny detail. And I remember when I heard about that, I said, I bet you there was an analytic that went ahead and said that little O-ring is important, and somebody ignored it. And for years, I never heard it. And then all of a sudden, one of the engineers died. And his daughter worked at NASA, and he was at the computer, and he had told them, he'd said at night it was too cold. And that O-ring, that little O-ring, he said that O-ring, it puts the whole mission at risk. And he told all his supervisors that, hey, this thing could explode. like this is and everybody's like, oh no, it'll be fine, it'll be fine. And when it blasted off, the daughter was right behind him. She was working at NASA too, and she says, well, Dad, you were wrong. And he said, just wait. And then boom, the whole thing exploded. So what Tim says is absolutely accurate. And so there are times where the analytic, the cube out of order, like, people don't listen to him, and the small details are so very important. But then there's times they're just doing it to for their ego. And so we as analytics, we need to be careful that this goes back to the triangulation for relationship death, which is entitlement, which is self-righteousness and victimhood. And so the analytic man can be entitled, like, I'm really smart, people should respect me, and the way they respect me is by listening to me and doing what I say, because I'm the one that always is the smartest person in the room. As a side note, who's the smartest person in the room? It's always going to be the one who's the best student, because the best student is the one that learns the most and comes out of that room smarter than they went in. It's not the person who's there to talk about themselves. It's the person who's learning. And so they're entitled that you should respect me because I have some education, or I have some experience, or I have this or this or this. They're the ones that always think they're the smartest person in the room. They know the most details maybe of people about the most things, but is that really intelligence? I don't know. It's a form of intelligence. The self-righteousness, like the analytic can go ahead, the analytic will go ahead and be focused in on all the details that they do well. But they're going to struggle to see the big picture where they're failing. So if a relationship is failing, the analytic can have a list of all the things that their spouse, their significant other did wrong, but they don't see the big picture of what they're doing wrong. And then the victim, the analytic, has a lot of data to show that they're a victim. So rather than being entitled, self-righteous, and a victim, the vaccination for entitlement is thankfulness. The vaccination to self-righteousness is humility, and the vaccination to being a victim is taking ownership. And so that's, I think, being a man. And I think a lot of times we as men, whichever strength we have, we say that's what being a man is. This is what being a man is. But we don't look at the others and say, well, no, being a man is also, if I'm an analytic, well, then what about the expressive? How do I grow and learn as a man? Great session, Tim. We've gone through, the amiable personality as a man, and now we've gone through the analytic. And so we're going to be going through the expressive next. This is based on frequency. And so my dad was an analytic, amiable analytic. And so I'm a driver analytic. So I think being a man, I think it's, taking ownership. It's having a plan. It's following a plan. It's accomplishing what you want to accomplish. It's setting goals. It's going after those goals. It's the things I'm good at. My dad did some of that, but not nearly probably as strong as I did. Does that make him any less of a man? It does not. So he was not aggressive and driven. He was more passive, maybe passive aggressive, which might be good or might not be good, depending on the situation. And so how do I go ahead and learn from him? And how do I not, rather than judge other men, how do I learn from other men, other types of men, other personalities to become a stronger man myself? Tim, any thoughts that you have?
I would say I agree.
So going into the mobile app, definitely go ahead and go in here and join, the Voices of Integrity for Men, and join this group, and then join other men. We tend to like other people who are like us, and we tend to love other people who are opposite of us. So often men that irritate us the most, the ones that irritate me the most, are going to be the amiable analytics, to some degree the expressives too at times, like both of these. So again, on the right hand side is the assertiveness, the analytic or the driver, and the expressive will be more assertive. The expressive, that what irritates me about the expressive is that they're all over the place. They miss some key details that really cost them and me and other people. And so what I'm saying is that often the men that irritate us the most, are the men that we need to be around to become a better, stronger man, ourselves. So hopefully this was, helpful to each one. Pass it along to other people. Definitely feel free to share it with women in your life as well, because together we truly can accomplish so much more than we ever could on our own. Have an amazing day. Bye-bye.